We're now recording, so just to make sure nobody says anything, they won't record it. I guess I don't have to sign a disclaimer that I can use your likeness or image or anything like that, but we'll use this session in the Saturdays, okay? First of all, my name's Tim Eliason. I am going to be your instructor for the online class. A little bit about myself. I have been with Esther for 7 years. I'm an assistant district manager. I do work in doing the taxes. Last year I did about 1,300 tax returns. Each year I've done in excess of 1,000. So obviously very busy doing that. And I have been teaching for Esther for about 4 years. Okay. I not only teach the online class, I teach 3 classroom sessions here in Western New York. I know we have individuals on my list that are in North Carolina, Florida, one young lady in Missouri. So some of the things I'll talk about may not pertain to you. We will talk a little bit about New York considerations, but most everything we're going to talk about is doing tax returns, okay? I will have the ability through the Zoom, and the reason I do the things that I do on Saturdays is it gives you an opportunity to feel like you're in the classroom. You'll be able to see things, ask me questions. Like I said, most of this will be self-study with an online because we only are going to meet on Saturday mornings. I may add some sessions during the week just for individuals. Sometimes individuals have other obligations or jobs on Saturdays, so they get a time to ask questions to me directly. I do randomly, as we get into the material, and especially a material where it's a little more involved later on, that I will put additional sessions during the week in the evenings for individuals. So we will be able to do that, okay? What I'm going to start out by doing is I am going to go through, I'll be able to share screens just like this. With the email, you should have received the syllabus. I know there's some individuals that are in remote locations. We either send a thumb drive to you with the books on there. The physical books should be in transit. I would hope they show up this weekend, if not Monday, for everybody. So you'll have the physical books. For those that picked up the corporate office and picked up the books, thank you. But everybody else that has requested them to be mailed, they are in transit. There will be 3 books, 2 volumes of the text, a workbook. Again, we talked about New York State considerations, so those books will be attached there too. Okay. As you see on the screen, online course. That information there is myself and my cell phone. I am a nocturnal person. I don't know that I sleep much. Must be going back to my bartending days. So I am available by text, phone calls, email, either one of those emails at any time. So you can contact me with questions. We'll go through procedures for a lot of things, but you know, you can contact me at any time, ask any questions. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you learn taxes, okay? As we talked about, this is a course that starts right now, runs through mid-December, and basically what we're going to do is teach you tax terms, tax laws, and how to prepare everything that you would see on a 1040, okay? So it is going to be a class where, you know, you're going to learn a lot of stuff. I'm sure a lot of people have prepared their taxes before, but, you know, we're going to learn things that you may not have done on your own taxes, okay? By the time you're done, this will get you 8 continuing ed hours. It will allow you to be basically prepared to turn in your PETN and be a licensed prepared tax preparer, okay? Nothing really that you have to know other than be able to read the book and know how to do math, okay? Obviously, a lot of the stuff for you guys, the computer, we're going to be doing the Zoom sessions. Things will be online. You know, you'll have to be doing the things online. You should have received a thumb drive. Our TaxWise software is right on that thumb drive. If you have any troubles with it, you can call. Our IT guy is here between 9 and 5 on Mondays. His name is Bob, if you want to write that down. Bob will be able to help you through with any difficulties That thumb drive with the software is pretty much plug and play. There is a little instruction sheet on there that talks about the passwords and logging in and setting it up. So if you have any troubles as you go along with that, let me know. Okay? As I talked about, course goals. I want to make you the best tax preparer to do 1040s that you can be. Okay? We're going to get you started, and by the end, as long as you work for somebody that's licensed to e-file with the IRS, or you can mail returns, depending on how you prepare them, you will be able to do that. Each chapter, there's a lot of material, but each chapter kind of builds on the previous chapter, and we'll have specific goals or things that we're going to learn in each chapter. Okay? Like I talked about, you have the Tax Matters Manual. The other thing that you can get is Pub 17. Actually, I'll show you that Pub 17 is already part of your software with TaxWise. You don't need to go buy it or get it from the IRS. They actually used to mail them out, but the IRS has stopped doing that. It's about a 293-page book, so they've stopped doing that. Okay? All right. Grades. Basically, the way that we do the class is we have a midterm, there's a written portion, a computer midterm, and a final exam. The midterms and the final exam are all open book. Just as you would when you're doing returns, you want to use references, but we will allow those to be open book. Okay? I will mail out to everybody the midterms, the written and the computer, to be completed and then sent back to me. When we say computer midterm, basically it is a tax return. Okay, you'll be doing a fictitious tax return. Homework and quizzes. The way that we're going to do the homework and the quizzes for the online class is at the end of each session in the Zoom or by email, I will assign certain exercises that are within the chapters, and then I will have everybody each week turn in the quizzes. We'll assign those on a Saturday. I would like to have them in by Wednesday, with the reading and stuff like that, so that I can have and see everybody's doing. So if I need to for Saturdays to adjust my lecture or review materials that I see that everybody's struggling with, I have an opportunity to do that. But again, I'll be sending out a procedure for all that, so don't worry about that. Okay? Obviously, the big portion of this is going to be tax returns. You have a workbook that is going to have roughly, give or take, about 50 tax returns in it that you're going to do as practice. Throughout, I will assign extra ones. So by the time you're done with the class, you'll have done probably 75 practice tax returns before you might ever really do a live one. If you do end up working for us and you are in the office, you'll do another 20. So there's a good chance that you could do 100 practice tax returns before you would ever do your first live one. Okay? So don't worry starting out. Like I said, everything that we're going to do, you're going to just keep getting the material. What I can liken it to is each return is a house, because obviously it's a home that you're doing it for. Every house has a foundation. So what we start out with, every time we build a house, we're always going to have the same foundation. What that house looks like, the color, what's in it, all the things that are in that house can be different, but every house has a foundation. So all those 100 returns, what we start out doing and the basic stuff is always going to be the same part of the return. What we put in the house as we build it, that may be different, and those are the things that we're going to teach you. Okay? Attendance. Again, Saturday lectures that I do live are not mandatory. There's no reason that you have to be here. Like I said, obviously, Saturdays and weekends, if you're working a job and you're taking this class online, it is a self-study. But again, I'm offering an opportunity on Saturdays to be available for a couple hours to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to, have the time to discuss things and see me do returns, but they will be recorded. Also, as far as recordings, I record my in-classroom sessions also, so those will be additional resources for you. All those will be up on our YouTube channel so that you can go view them. I know they were a great resource for everybody that was in the online class last year. Okay. Here's a schedule for our classes. It is in your syllabus, okay? You can see that we have the times that we're going to do everything. Obviously, we will not be meeting that Saturday after Thanksgiving. So we'll have that week off. That'll be right after the midterm. But each week, these are the topics that I'm going to cover. I will talk about the lectures. Again, I'll review quiz questions if I see that there's an error, but those will be the topics that we'll talk about. These are all components of the 1040. And also on those, I'll probably do one of the problems for you live. So as I'm doing the problem, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and you'll see me do the return right on the screen here. Okay? And the last part, there's a little record sheet. These are all the returns that you're going to do. These are the practice returns that you'll do. It's a place for you to record what you get for federal and state. I used to hand out the answers so that everybody could see how they're doing. But what I found was that everybody tended to be so caught up in getting the right refund that they kind of lost track of the procedures of using the tax forms and doing the tax return. So after each week we cover a topic, I will send out the answers to the problems, or we'll discuss them in our lecture time together, or you may see them in my classroom videos also. Okay? All right. So that's that. Let's see here. Nothing in the chat for questions right now. Okay. What we're going to get into, if everybody feels comfortable with the Zoom, like I said, everybody is muted. I set it up that you're muted when you come in. So that's on there. Down in the left corner, if you put your mouse there, you can see your mic. You can see the camera that looks like a TV camera. You can click and turn that off if you would like to. So those are the places that you can see that, okay? Sometimes, like I said, we're going to have, roughly 20 people from across the country that will have things. Gets to looking like Hollywood squares after a while. So just want to make sure that everybody has opportunity. So we'll kind of stop and do things as we go along, okay? If you want to ask a question live, I'm going to take a couple minutes, and if anybody has questions about the syllabus, you can just unmute yourself down in the corner and ask away. Okay, awful quiet there. Or you can type it in the chat if we can't sure about unmuting. Okay. All right. Okay. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to get into the textbook. We're going to kind of go through, as you can see from our syllabus, those first couple of chapters are just kind of an overview and some basic things on taxes. We'll talk about that. And then we'll go through some procedural things about TaxWise so you can kind of see it in motion if you haven't had a chance yet, okay? One thing I will say about TaxWise, that is the software that the IRS uses and that we use. That being said, once you get in there to start using the program, have at it. Click on the buttons. You can't break it. If you do break it, I will send you a new one for free. So don't feel bad if you break it, okay? But I want you to get in there and learn it, okay? The way I teach is I discuss the tax law, the terms. I will get you into the returns. You'll see them in action because I want you to understand the law, understand how the forms work, and then get into it, okay? All right, so what we're going to do is okay, so in your textbook, again, the class is going to be divided up, and we're going to have each chapter that we'll talk about. Each book's going to have kind of an overview or purpose that we're going to talk about. Obviously, tax returns are here to calculate and determine the correct amount of tax due and all income, and we stress all income received. and to pay the smallest amount of tax legally allowed, okay? Obviously, we want to play by the rules, and we have to prepare a return that is accurate and complete, but we want to make sure that we compile all the information. As I go along, you'll see that I'll kind of help you. I'll give little anecdotes about returns that I've done and situations, so you'll be able to ask those right questions or know what questions or where to find the information, or sometimes how to draw the information from your client as to how to return, okay? Properly prepared return, the tax due, and a refund, okay? I want to stress refund. Tax returns aren't where we're finding magically money and printing it in the back office to give to somebody. A refund typically is they've paid too much tax out of their pay or from their business or whatever it is. They've paid too much tax to the IRS or their state, and they're going to get some of it back, okay? I can't stress that enough with people when I'm with clients, that they have to understand it's a refund, okay? It's getting money back that they've already paid. Basically what we do is say, your refund, you can have it in your paycheck or you can have it in the end of the year from your tax return. We got to decide when that excess money is going to come to you and do the calculation, okay? Obviously, total tax due has been collected, and for some people, they don't pay enough throughout the year, and then they pay at the end of the year. This is where when you fill out that withholding certificate with allowances, you may get a chance where you see claiming, single, zero, married one, whatever it may be. That's what may impact that refund. Now, we will learn there are credits that are part of the refund. What I want you to remember with credits, some credits are like Pac-Man. They just eat up the tax bill. Some credits are like the Energizer Bunny. After the tax bill's gone, they keep going on and on and on, okay? So some credits that we'll see people get over and above what they get back from what they paid out of their W-2s or their pay stubs, okay? We'll talk about filing status. That really drives what we do on a tax return. How are they filing? Most commonly, we're going to see single, married filing joint, or head of household, okay? We'll talk about the fact, does somebody need to file a tax return, okay? In this day and age, one thing that's come into play is the Affordable Care Act for health insurance. In order to buy insurance through the Affordable Care Act through a state or federal marketplace, you must file a return. For some states, for individuals over 65 or retirees that get a reduction on their property taxes, they must file a tax return. Now, there's cases in both those that you may not have enough income to file a return, but again, they're requiring because they need to validate your income. Basically, with a 1040 personal return, there's three forms. The EZ, that's basically when you hear them talking about a postcard return, that's what a postcard return looks like, okay? 1040A, we have a little bit more going on, and then 1040 is all the details that we're going to talk about. Everything that you do, the way the software is set up for tax-wise, that you're going to do the returns in, we're going to do everything on a 1040. I'll show you at the top where it says what type of return you could file for it, but I want you to do all the returns and all your practice returns in the workbook on the 1040, because that way I want you to see all the different things that are on the tax return at the same time, even though it may be one that can be filed on an EZ. Okay? You can see the EZ, again, basically 14 lines. That is the postcard version of what happens right now, okay? The next page, you see a 1040A. You can see we're starting to add more lines, maybe some adjustments to income. We might have some other credits that we can take that we couldn't take on the EZ because we're eligible. But the big thing with an A is we don't itemize our deductions, okay? You get a standard number, and we'll talk about that. And then we have the 1040. Again, most elaborate detail for everything that is on there, okay? Little history note, little side note for you. The tax law, income federal tax law took effect in 1912. The first 1040 with instruction was 4 pages long, okay? Obviously, I gave you a textbook, or you have a textbook that has several pages. That is a, cliff note of the tax law. Tax code is about 700,000 pages. So, you know, there's a lot to it. The original tax return, you had to make $20,000 in 1912 in order to pay taxes. And then on that 20,000 to 50,000, you paid 1%. Keep in mind that in 1912, the median income for a household was $2,700. Okay? So everybody talks about nobody pays taxes this day. It was never even set up that way. In the original tax return, anybody that made less than $20,000 in 1912, which was a lot of money then, didn't pay taxes. Okay? All right, again, we see the flow of the income tax return. We see things that are here, all the different things with the EZ, the A, the 1040, all the different components as to what is on that return and what at each level is added. Okay, tax matters. All right, that is the name of the textbook. We write our own textbook. Actually, an employee of ours is our textbook writer. Mark is a great tax preparer and a very sharp individual, very detail-oriented. So he kind of set this up because the book is set up, like I said, that we do the foundation stuff first and then build on it, okay? This roadmap that you see here, you can see the chapters are not in order by number. What these pages doing is showing you the order of the chapters if you were to follow along line by line on the 1040. So you can see that all the things that we would do that we're going to talk about today is in chapter 2. That's the header, all the filing, all the information. That's our foundation section, okay? Then, next section on the 1040 is income. These are all the sources of income that we're going to talk about, okay? And then if you go back to the 1040 on the previous page, the next part shows adjustments to income. That's the next section. But again, we're doing them so that you do the stuff that you do most often in a tax return over and over, and then we're building on that depending on what section of the tax return that we're referring to. So again, you're going to do the same thing over and over and over again starting out, and then we'll build different houses above. Okay? One of the things that we do with the book too is you are going to get to know, and not named after me, but Tim and Michelle. Okay? This Boyd family, you're going to get to know them very well, because what we do is this is a family that in the examples throughout the textbook, we're going to always use this family. So you're going to start out with them, see the things as their household grows, as things change in their household, what it does to their tax return. So you're going to see this evolving of their tax return based on moving through their life and different things that may come up. Okay, so you can see that their family's going to change. Different things may happen in their household, where their income comes from, the age of their kids. Different things will happen to these folks as we move through the book. So you can see how a tax return would change for a person that you do from year to year. Okay. All right, chapter 2. Okay. This is typically the way each chapter is going to start out. It'll be a little brief introduction. Hey, this is what we're going to talk about. A little purpose statement says successful tax preparers can determine whether or not a taxpayer is required to file. Their filing status, dependents, these are all things that every tax return has. As I said, this is the foundation, okay? In this chapter, we're going to talk about filing status. We're going to determine if somebody can be head of household, okay? Head of household, if it's a married filing joint, I have individuals come in and says, well, I'm head of household, okay? Well, that's not necessarily the case in married filing joint. Just because you're single doesn't mean you're head of household. Head of household on tax return is determined if you have dependents that are qualifying, and we'll talk about that, okay? We're going to talk about whether a taxpayer really needs to file a return. What are those thresholds? What form to file? We're going to talk about exemptions. That's the number of people on the return so that we can lower taxable income. As you can see there, we're going to talk about dependency for qualifying childs and relatives. They are different. A relative may be where moms move back into the house, or you have a brother that's on hard times that's living with you, or your aunt or your uncle or whatever it may be. A lot of times we see multi-generational homes, and we have to determine whether everybody that lives in that home can be on one tax return. Okay? There's a worksheet that determines that. All right? Sometimes, if parents are separated or unmarried, there's a child involved, we have to determine who gets to take the child. Okay? And then we're going to kind of go through, and I'll show you tax-wise about completing the return. All right. Each topic, you're going to see little headers, and again, this is where I was referring to the Pub 17. I'll show you where that's at. Also, it'll have directions to go to the government's website, irs.gov, and there's publications that are more detailed on each topic, okay? Those are there for reference. Not necessarily that you need to read it from page 1 to whatever it may be, but I do want you to get in there, and I want you to be able to, know where those things are, use them as reference. Again, our written and our midterms and final are all open book. So if you need to know where your resources are because you're unsure how to do something, you need to know where those are at, okay? Filing status determines a lot of things. Do I need to file? What is my standard deduction? It tells me how to calculate the tax, which tax table I may use to determine the tax of my income, and also whether I'm going to get extra deductions and credits on my return. We have 5 filing statuses for returns: single, married filing joint, married filing separate, head of household, and qualifying widower with a dependent child. Okay? So these are our 5 filing statuses. Now, oddly enough, and I ask this question in my in-class all the time, is that you can be considered married or unmarried, okay? Even though you're married, you could be in the eyes of the IRS considered unmarried, and we'll talk about that, okay? Single, obviously that's a single person, okay? We are talking about somebody that is unmarried or considered unmarried, okay? If I have anybody in the class that is married, first thing I want you to do when the class is over is turn to your spouse and say, can we consider ourselves married or unmarried? I'm sure it's not going to go over very well, okay? But in the eyes of the IRS, for filing status and determining tax and credits, there may be situations where considering yourself unmarried would be beneficial, okay? Because if somebody is considered unmarried in the eyes of the IRS, they could file as head of household instead of single or married filing separate, okay? Married filing joint. Obviously, you have to be considered married and file a joint return. As it says there, most of the time, or usually, it results in a lower tax, okay? Some people think that, oh, one person makes a whole bunch of money and the other person doesn't make any in a marriage. We should do separate so that the other person doesn't get as much of a tax bill. Not necessarily true, because the taxable income can be at a higher rate when you do married filing separate, okay? The other thing with married filing separate is you lose some of the credits and deductions to lower taxable income, and we'll see that when we do some returns. Injured spouse does not mean there's a case of domestic violence or anything like that. Injured spouse in the eyes of the IRS means that one spouse owes past due taxes, child support, student loans, etc., so that at the end, when you do your refund, that refund may be taken by a government or another agency to offset debt. In an injured spouse, we can create a partition between 2 married taxpayers on a joint return so that only the individual that has a tax bill has their portion of the refund taken, so that household still gets refunds, okay? And we'll see that in action, all right? Step farther is innocent spouse, okay? This is the case where somebody that maybe is single gets married, okay? And then all of a sudden they get divorced. Well, while they were married, one or the other created a tax liability that they didn't know about. An example would be, I'm working with a client right now. He was in the process of getting divorced. Their last year they were married, they filed a joint return. After the marriage was dissolved, he found out his wife had a job and did not report that income, and it generated a tax liability, okay? All of that was something that she did not disclose during the preparation of the return. So he is innocent from that tax bill. So we try to get that relief from him. Otherwise, because they're on the return together joint, they're both responsible for the tax unless we can determine an innocent spouse, okay? Married filing separate, again, you can be married and file separate returns, and there may be cases with student loans, other things that may be more beneficial. I'll show you in the software when we're doing returns, we'll do some comparisons that'll show sometimes it is more beneficial to do a separate because of the way that the tax return. But like I said, 90% of the time, married filing joint is a much better preparation of the return, okay? Head of household, you can, again, be unmarried or considered unmarried on the last day of the year, okay? In order to be head of household, there's going to be a little worksheet that we'll see that is basically saying that you paid for more than half the cost of keeping up the home for the year, all right? Where we get into questions about head of household is maybe some parents have a child that got divorced, has a child themselves, the child and the grandchild move back into the house. Is that parent of the grandchild a head of household? Well, can't really do that if they haven't paid more than half the cost of keeping up their home. So we have to determine that, and we'll see how that works. And also, to be head of household, you have to have that qualifying person, whether it's a qualifying child or a qualifying relative. All right, and we'll discuss that. Okay. We don't see a lot of qualifying widows or widowers with a dependent child. Okay, they're a pretty rare instance depending on what happened with the household. But, you know, those are the guidelines, very similar to a head of household status. But this is just an extension of that when you have a qualifying widow or widower. All right. The IRS loves worksheets. You're always going to see this thing where it tells you to keep records. All right. So you're always going to see a lot of this little thing up here. Keep for your records and a little pencil. Okay. So basically what it's saying is that this is something that you should prepare and keep with your taxes. All right. So we'll talk about that worksheet. Okay. This is a section that talks about who is a qualifying person for you to file as head of household. Okay. Obviously, the person is a child or a relative. Okay. Talks about and, so that means that both apply. Then this person can do that. We're going to see this a little bit more when we get into the tax return. But these are tables to determine if there's somebody that you can put on a tax return that is a qualifying individual. Like I said, inside the chapters are going to be different sections where we're going to have exercises. These are things that I will assign. The way I typically have you do those is that you will turn them in by typing the answers just in the body of an email. You may write exercise 2, and then on each line after that, you'll put the answers to the exercises that I assign. Same thing with the quizzes. Write quiz chapter 2, and then type each one of the answers. I don't need to have you scan them or write on them. I just need the answers of the ones that will be assigned to you. And again, once those are assigned, I like them usually in by Wednesday so that I can see how everybody's doing to prepare for the lecture on Saturday. Okay? Filing requirements. Okay? First thing for that, we have to determine filing status. We got some examples. John and Mary Brown were married December 31st, the last day of the year. They flew off to Vegas, 11:59 p.m., New Year's Eve. They decided to get married, and that was when it was documented. They are considered married for the entire year. Okay? Same thing, Jay and Suzanne's divorce became final the last day of the year. Now, they are considered single for the entire year. One thing I will say about that is sometimes there are things within a divorce or separation decree that supersedes that, where it says you must file a joint return the last year. So sometimes you'll see different things in their legal documents that say how you need to file the return for filing status. If a couple has a person that passes, okay, that person, you will still do a joint return. Example, if somebody comes to me to do 2017's return and their spouse passed in 2017, I would still do a joint return. If they come to do a 2017 tax return and say that their spouse passed in January of 2018, I would still need to do a joint return for 17. And also they would be eligible for a joint return in 18. But obviously we do some things that are unique because the spouse would not be there to sign the return. Okay. 3 factors determine whether a return must be filed: income, filing status, and age. Okay. Now, this little table from an IRS. If I look here, if your filing status is single, we've determined that. And at the end of the year, you are under 65, then you must file a return if your gross income is $10,350 or more. Okay? These are not numbers I'm going to ask you to memorize or throw out, but I want you to know where that number comes from. $10,350 is $6,300 standard deduction plus $4,050 exemption for a single person. So that's where that number comes from. And each one that you move up, that is the standard deduction plus the exemption for the classification on the left. Okay? So you can see, as you get older, as it's married filing joint, head of household, those standard deductions and exemptions climb up. Anybody that has income below these does not necessarily have to file a return, but they may want to because they might have withholding from a W-2 and they need to get their money back, their refund of overpaid. Okay? This one is a chart, as it says. It's kind of one of those ones that determines for child and other dependents on a return, if that child is determined that they're a qualifying child, if they need to file. Okay? If you look right here, one second. Okay, you can see right here, talks about children under 65, obviously, and if they must file. There's 2 classifications. When a child is a dependent, they don't get the exemption for themselves. They get the standard deduction. You see the $6,300 of earned income. The other one is unearned, and that's a much lower threshold. Later on, we're going to talk about a thing called the kiddie tax. Say you have somebody on your return that grandma and grandpa for college bought them savings bonds when they were born. Those bonds have grown through their life, and now they're cashing in to go to college. Well, if those bonds generate $1,050 or more of interest, that person must file a return, and they will pay the kiddie tax. Okay? And we'll see how that works later on. All right? Okay. Down here at the bottom, talks about who should file. Okay? Again, we talked about tax withheld, or they made estimated payments. We'll talk about those. You have an earned income credit. I stress the word earned income. Okay? For those of you that are older like myself, if you remember the old Smith-Barney investment commercial, they used to say on there, we make money the old-fashioned way. We earn it, okay? What I mean by earned income credit is you must have earned income. Things like unemployment, Social Security, disability, pensions, those are not earned income. They're part of your taxable income, quite possibly, but they're not earned, okay? Additional child tax credit. American Opportunity Credit. This is the credit for college. Premium tax credit. You buy insurance through the marketplace through the Affordable Care Act. You pay a premium and you have a credit that you get back. Okay? And all these. These are all refundable credits. What I mean by that is you've taken care of your tax bill. These are credits that you're getting money back because there were extra credits that you were eligible for. Okay? Again, some exercises. We'll have you work on those and have you turn those in. Okay. Okay. All right. We'll talk about the correct forms. Okay. Again, I'm going to get into that when we get into tax-wise. Okay. This is basically a summary of general information for all taxpayers. Why should I file electronically? Great idea, because electronic returns go in faster. You could see your refund in up to 21 days. States like New York mandate electronic filing, or they're going to penalize you $50. The other thing with electronic filing, if it's a return that must go in paper, it can take up to 6 to 8 months before you could see your refund, depending on the time of the year. It just takes that long for the IRS to process a paper return. So obviously electronically filing. When do I file? Most of the time it's by April 15th for individuals. Obviously Monday's coming up. That's an extension time, so you can get that extension of the extra 6 months. However, you must pay the tax you think you're going to have due by the due date of April 15th. The 6-month extension doesn't get you time to pay. It gets you time to file the paperwork, okay? And we'll talk about that when we do some things in a later chapter, all right? Keeping records. Everybody must keep the records, okay? Refund information. I'll show you how to do things online, or how to get the information status of somebody's return by phone or online. Also, we're in the process of making an app for EG Tax. We'll have something on our app where you can find out the status of your refund. Have to file because you had to change the address, got married, things like that, okay? And later on, we'll talk about penalties, all right? Identity theft, again, we're going to talk about that when we get in the return. That is a common thing now, obviously with Equifax and what happened to their database. Identity is very important in a return, okay? One thing I want you to remember about doing tax returns, okay? Tax returns now, to prevent identity theft and prove who is eligible for the refund, have become very involved. When I do a tax return, and if I did your tax return, I now know your name, your social security number, your phone number, your date of birth, your address, your email, where you live, who you work for, okay, where your retirement funds are. I would even know if you have another second home and a vacation home. I know your kids' names. I know where they go to school, okay? Now the states require your driver's license number. I now have your driver's license number, okay? What I'm saying is tax returns have a lot of private individual information for identity. Basically, the only thing that's not on a tax return right now is your blood type, your DNA, and your fingerprints, okay? I don't know if we're going to get to that point at someday, but right now, everything about you is on that tax return. So treat that information very, very careful, okay? Okay. We have exemptions, dependents, and a standard deduction. Again, we have a little reading that you can do in Pub 17. Exemptions. Those are the exemptions that you get to subtract off for the number of people in your household. For the year we're talking about, each one of those individuals is $4,050 that you can reduce income before tax is calculated. Okay? Okay. Exemptions for dependents. Here's where we're going to talk about the fact that exemption, those are for dependent taxpayer test, joint test. If you look at the little help box, there are 5 tests that must be met for a child to be a qualifying child. Obviously, that child must be related to you, okay? If I had a girlfriend that lived with me and she had a child that was not mine, I would have trouble qualifying for my qualifying status or claiming that child because they're not related to me. Age obviously comes into play. Residency. If I am a parent and my wife and I are separated and the children live with her, I cannot put those children on my return because I do not have residency. There are ways that we'll talk about where you can release that claim of the child, but you know, that residency. Support. We talked about, do you spend more than half of the expenses to upkeep a home? And joint return. If you notice, between each one of these, I said the word and. okay? These are all have to be in effect. I can't say, well, I got number 1, 3, and 5, so I can do it. No, you must have all 5, okay? Same thing with the one at the bottom there for the qualifying relatives. Those are ands. You must have all those criteria met. One thing I will tell you is that the IRS loves flowcharts, where you ask a question and then you get the answer, and you can see the word and between each one, okay? So if you take a look, we start out with step 1, all right? We got a little question there, all right? Okay. Then we have an and, so I have to start answering my questions about age, own support, things like that. So each one of those, all right? Once I've done that, the IRS loves these little things where you get to a point and you ask the question, and there's 2 choices. If it's yes, I see my little arrow where I continue, and they love stop signs, okay? They're going to have these where if you answer no to something, there's going to be a stop sign, and usually it'll say you cannot take this credit, or you cannot file this form, or you cannot go farther. So basically that's the IRS version of Monopoly. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, okay? So you're going to see a lot of these with the IRS. This is a great tool for you to have to refer back to, because these are great ways to interview if I have a client sit down with me, okay? All right. And you can see all the different steps to go through whether I can have. There's sometimes will be little paragraphs. You'll see this definition and special rules. There are situations that are exceptions to what happened, but you know, those are very rare. Things with dependency and credits, especially refundable credits, are very black and white with the IRS. There is no gray with them on these, okay? Standard deduction, we'll talk a little bit about that, okay? As to what that amount is. We'll see that in the return, and you'll find that in your reading, okay? All right, now, I talked earlier about support. If you provide, or they provide more than half their support. This little worksheet here is completed for you. As you can see here, it talks about John and Sue Betzel, I guess is pronounced, have Sue's mother, Jean, living with them. This worksheet, based on all the income and the expenses that mom has living with us, determines whether I can, whether I can claim her, okay? You're going to read through this, okay? There's a problem where you're going to do your own, okay? And there's always going to be little help boxes, but you can see on this page here, you're going to have one where you're going to determine support for yourself, all right? All right. There are instances and where you must determine if a qualifying child is of separate parents, but they can be a qualifying child by the rules of more than one person. Comes up to play where somebody is determined to have joint custody, okay? At times, the IRS will say, that's not possible. 365 is an odd number. You cannot divide it by 2. But you go and you count the number of hours, and it is a perfect split. There's going to be tiebreakers, okay, as to who can claim that as a qualifying child on the return. Here you see them. Most common one that it gets down to is if a child lived with each parent for the same amount of time, the IRS will treat the child as a qualifying child, the parent who had the highest income, okay? The reason that they're doing this and they use the highest income is it prevents the fraud that we see most often with the earned income credit. A child will be passed back and forth to the parent on separate returns where the greatest earned income credit may be. If they have truly joint custody and it's a 50-50 split, the IRS is always going to have the tiebreaker go to the higher income. Okay? All right. What we're going to do, I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes just to stretch your legs. If you want to type in any questions, again there. I'm going to stretch a little bit. Okay, and then we'll come back. What I'm going to do is I'll get into the tax-wise. You'll see a tax return, and we'll be right in on that. Okay, so I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Okay, so we're going to resume here. Okay. If you noticed in the textbook, a couple things too, just was chatting with a couple people, and for those of you that are out of state or not local to where we're at in Amherst in Western New York, your books were sent last week by priority. I will do a little tracking and email you so you can anticipate. They were sent in a box priority, all the books there, so you should be getting those very soon. Obviously, you'll have them so that for this week, for the homework and things like that for next week's lecture. But again, you'll have this to refer back to once you get the textbooks to take a look at. Okay? All right. So what we're going to get into now is well, before we do this, does anybody have any questions? You can unclick your mic down there at the bottom if anybody wants to ask anything and ask a question, or again, you can type it in the little chat on the side. I usually, like I said earlier, keep everybody muted just because it keeps from cross chatter. So, but if anybody has any questions right now, I want this to be an interactive session because we are live. So if you have any questions as it stands right now, please let me know. Or if you want to test the microphone on your computer and just say hi.
I have a question.
Yes, Brendan.
So the tax-wise, we'll be just kind of going through, like you'll show it on your screen, and we'll be working off of ours.
Exactly. You know, that thumb drive that you have or you will receive that has the software on it. The other thing that will allow you to do with that thumb drive, I'm sending out instructions. You'll be able to use that thumb drive to upload and download the return. So if you are traveling or you're away from your computer or you're going to work on a different computer, you'll be able to take that mobile. But yeah, the tax-wise, it is plug and play. It is password protected. All the password, and I'm going to show you how to log into that in a second so you can make notes on that when we get the tax-wise up. But, you know, that thumb drive, that is the exact software. And like I said, it's what we use in the offices and what's what the IRS uses.
Will we be able to use that tax-wise to file someone else's return in the future?
It's not electronically tied. It's a student version because you have to be registered with the IRS to e-file. So it won't allow you to electronic file. You can compile returns for 2016, but it's not for 17 because obviously we don't know the tax law yet because we have not reached the end of the year and they haven't determined that. A lot of times for a tax year, we don't see the actual finalized forms from the IRS and the government till the second week in January because of all the changes that happened last minute. So that software will allow you to generate forms, compile returns, but it is not set up to e-file because you're not registered or licensed with the IRS to e-file as an agent. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. This will be kind of a little thing, like I said, with your software. It is set up to be plug and play. Okay, so once you are on, that's in there, you're going to see a little EG, our little logo, that'll be on your desktop or whatever it may be. You click on that, you're going to see this screen. This is where you'll log in. There is a little information sheet on there that talks about how to log in. You're always going to log in as guest, okay? Once you use the username guest, it'll give you the options of training, but use guest because that way the software will operate correctly for you signing in for guest. Training kind of limits you on some things, so we set you up as guest so that you have a live version of what the software is like, okay? The password to log in once you're on guest is the word student with a capital S, a dash, not an underscore, but dash 17. Again, on your thumb drive, there'll be a little sheet there, a little file or information, readme, whatever, that'll show you this, but that's the way that you're going to log in, okay? I'm going to log into my room. Oop, the cap locks are on. Hold on one second here. Once you put in your password, you're going to see a screen that'll come up just like this. That'll say select package. Okay. What that is on this software, we have all these different packages that we can do on the returns. That's within TaxWise. Obviously, for the basic class, we're going to focus on the individual, the 1040. All right. The software can do, if I do Sherry, which would be like your return for an estate for somebody deceased or a trust, partnerships, S corps. There's things on there for estate taxes, gift taxes, tax exempt organizations. We're not going to go through all those. There are portions of some of these we will talk about because some of them generate forms that come over to your personal 1040 or your individual return. So you're going to be able to get a little exposure to that, and you will be able to see those forms. Later on, we do advanced classes that do talk about these things, get a little more in depth with them about classifications of companies, how to do those things. But like I said, in the time we have together in our time between now and December, there's just not enough time because we want to teach you and have you learn everything about the individual. That's the return that for everybody, probably 95% of the population is the only tax return they'll ever see. Okay, so we have that. All right, so like I said, we're going to, you'll click on the individual, it'll be highlighted. Okay, it's going to put you in a screen that looks like this. All right, so this screen is where basically you're going to start everything. Okay, one thing I'm going to do a little bit of just kind of some basic navigation here for you. Okay, up in the top you see these little tiles. Okay, so it's going to talk about those. I'll send instructions about printing returns. Don't print every return because some of them that we do can be, 50 pages. I don't want you to kill your ink cartridges on my account. I'll teach you and I'll send you how to do them to PDFs so you can see a return, what it looks like when you've completed it, because it's going to be right on the forms. Okay, there's a button up here called Pub 17. You kept seeing that when we were going through the textbook. That is, when I click on it, it is attached to your TaxWise. It is the Pub 17 from the IRS. Again, please don't print this. Okay. Because as you can see up here, it's 293 pages. I don't want you killing your ink cartridge on me. Okay. All right. Now, the nice thing about this, if you look on the left down here, on the little columns on the bottom, there's a word that says index. So you can click on that. It takes you to the end of the book. Each one of these has a little different number after it. So if I go up here and I'd want to see, well, accounting periods, what does it say about that? If I click on the little blue number, takes it right to the section in the book. I can look that up. So while you're doing a tax return, and again, while you're doing your midterm, you have this to access. It's right there as a button on the top. You said, I better look it up. Is this person a qualifying child? I'm going to check my rules. Okay, so if we were to go to the index, and we want to know if we have a qualifying child, here we are. We click on our page, takes me right to the qualifying child. There's those tests. All right, 5 tests must be made, just like we talked about. A little more detail than maybe what's in the textbook, so you can go there and read about it and see how that's determined. May talk about some exceptions on there. Okay, all right, so we have that. Okay, let me see here if I can get this back up. So you guys can't see the PDF right now? Okay, all right, let me get back to tax-wise. Hold on one second here. Can everybody see that okay?
I can.
What's that?
I can.
Okay, all right. Because sharing the screen, it should be on there. You should see the tax-wise, the blue EG with the tax-wise on there. Okay. All right. Okay. So that IRS Pub 17, that's that button that's up there. Okay. When we start a return, okay, we're just going to type in there, we're going to start a new return or whatever it may be. In your workbook, you're going to see there's fictitious Social Security numbers. Those are not actual Social Security numbers. So those are fictitious ones. You'll do that to type in the return. Okay. So you'll have different ones with that. Give me just 1 second here. All right, give me 1 second. I'm just getting a return prepared here so I can bring it up for you. Give me just 1 second. I have to log into a different room so that I can have a fictitious return. Obviously, I don't want to, for privacy, don't want to show you anybody's actual return. Okay, So when we're on the TaxWise like this is where we're going to start our returns. Obviously, there's a little screen here that says tax that are underneath the little blue circle says tasks that you do most often. Okay. First one, where when you start a new return, you're going to start here. And this is what we'll kind of show. Okay. Or you're going to open an existing return. The software is set up, once you type something in, it's auto save. So if you type two things into a return and close it, and you didn't save it, don't worry. It is an auto save. So we'll be in there. Once you've established that social security number in there, then that file is saved and exists. And you'd have to do something pretty special to be able to delete it. Okay? So that's why I say it's going to save all of your returns for you. Okay? If I start a new return, I'm going to use my fictitious person that I use. And it says I already have one in there, but I'm going to open this. So once we're in there, okay, it'll pop open the return. This is what the TaxWise looks like, okay? Everybody sees that okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So is this the exact format of the real software we would use to file somebody's real tax return?
That is correct. It's exactly what we use.
Does everybody in the country use the same thing?
No. Some people use different forms. Ours is set up is exactly the same software for the IRS because it's form driven. There's a lot of other software out there or other vendors that their software is set up as interview. What I mean by that, it's like a TurboTax. It asks you a question, you answer it. The reason we teach the class and the software that we use is because we're teaching our individuals to be tax preparers, to see the forms, to know the tax law, to know how the forms and calculations work. Very easy just to plug a number in and let the computer calculate. We're going to teach you that number, why that number is created, what that number results in, and see it in action in the form. Okay?
Right.
All right, so we have, we're logged in here. Again, we're going to, if I take a look, I'm going to go back out here for a second. When we start a new return, we're going to see this box, okay? You're going to type in the social security number, all right? Once that number is in, okay, I'm not going to type the last number. Once that's numbered in, it'll be blacked out. You'll get a little triangle. You got to type it again the same, okay? It's kind of like it's created a password, because obviously you want to make sure that somebody's social security number is correct. When you're doing a return, make sure that you have the right social security number. Even if you're looking at their W-2 with a social security number from their employer, there have been instances. I had a client I had to help because for 5 years he was getting W-2s from a previous tax preparer that was put in there that they had transposed or made the wrong two last numbers of his social security number. He did not get credit when he retired for those 5 years for income. So please make sure that you have that. All right. If it's a social security number that's in effect that we've already used, like this one, we're going to go right in there. Okay. So we are in the return. All right. Now I've typed a lot of things in here already because I use this return quite often. I am a reason that it says healthcare. I am a licensed person to do the marketplace or the Affordable Care Act and Medicare. So I do insurance for our clients also. Okay, so we'll talk things about that. But when you get in here, you're going to see this. You got these fields, all right? And we're going to do a little navigation around the screen here, okay? Up here in the top left, there is this little blue box, okay? This is like a slot machine. I keep it up there for my clients because it depends on their refund. Once I put things in, I can hear them, I can see them smile because they see their refund go up. I put other things in, that number goes down or goes to the red. I hear them stop breathing, okay? What I'm saying is that's up there and that's where you will see, so that you don't have to go to the spot in the form, you'll see how their refund is. And it's for the client too to be able to see that. But for you, you can see, I got the income in, here's the refund. You can see how things work, okay? All right. What you see here on the left, this thing with all these numbers and all these forms and stuff, that's what's called the tree, okay? In order to have that tree up there, under the view, there's a little thing that's called a tree, okay? I teach all my students to use the tree because it shows all the forms that are active. What I mean by that, you see blue check marks, it means that form's been completed. If you see a red exclamation point, that form is waiting for information, okay? So what I mean by that, right now I have my main info, it has red. So if I look at the form here, I got red boxes waiting for information from me, okay? So that's where that comes in handy. Also, we'll show you as we go through this that when you do certain things on the main information sheet showing the filing status or the dependency, it's going to make forms on the left, okay? So those are going to be there, all right? Okay, so as I was talking about, the return that I have started says that this can be filed on a 1040A. So you see this right up here at the top. We're always going to have, our software is defaulted to have you always do it on the 1040, but it'll show if they could file a lesser form, okay? 1040 Puerto Rico, 1040 non-resident, okay? Hopefully they can still file in Puerto Rico. Tough time down there. Keep them in your thoughts and prayers always. But, you know, those are the returns that within the 1040, depending on the information you put in there as to which one that it will be filed on, and it'll show that at the top. I'm going to put in their name. Obviously, the social security number on the top or the primary comes from what you put in at the first screen. You're going to put their address in there. This line that says name line 2, care of, that one would show up if it was a married couple and one or the other was deceased. Okay, that's a spot you would put the spouse because they're getting the refund in care of. Or if it's a single person that passes and there's an executor or somebody for their estate or their will, that person's name would go there. We'll talk about that later too, okay? Phone numbers, date of birth, occupation, okay? Occupation, whatever you put in there, it does not impact their tax, okay? So you're putting it in there. It's more for the IRS to collect information that shows, you know, professions of people that are filing taxes. It's a database for the government, okay? So you can put that in there. Prime example, I never put in housewife, stay-at-home mom, homemaker, okay? In my book, that individual is a domestic engineer, okay? For those of you that are not familiar with the pay or the jobs or duties of a domestic engineer, that would be better known as a stay-at-home mom. Domestic engineer and all of the jobs that she does, every year they determine that net worth or what their salary should be. In 2016, a domestic engineer should have been paid $252,000, okay? So, you know, sometimes it makes the client feel good and say, hey, you're a domestic engineer, you know, and they'll give their husband a little nudge and say, see, you should be paying me more. So, but in there again, occupation does not impact anything on the filing, all right? You can see here as we go down, we got some foreign address, okay? I'm gonna go back up for a second. Birth date, make sure it is in there accurate, okay? Because there are things with retirement that is contingent on that. Make sure that birth date is accurate for a tax return. Special processing, we don't do a lot with that. I have a few clients that are military. I may see a lot more Puerto Rican returns this year just because of people being displaced because of the hurricane. There are clients, I have clients in Germany, Dubai, South Africa, obviously Canada with my proximity here. So I'll be talking about different things about even those returns. But for right now, don't worry about that. There are things here that talk about the taxpayer's spouse if they're blind. That's checked. That comes into play for their standard deduction, okay? If you want to play with that a little bit when you do a return, you're more than welcome to, okay? We're going to find out that Harry Healthcare passed in 2016, all right? He didn't like his tax return, so he passed on tax day in 2016. If I do that, this is where I was talking, I go back up, you can see I got this red box now. that wasn't there before. I would have to type in Harriet's name there to say that the return is being filed in her care of because she is the surviving spouse. Okay? So you can see here the tax return is being filed by surviving spouse, and I would have to put her name up there. Okay? The next question here, whatever your political party or preference may be, like I said, last year I did in the neighborhood of 1,300 tax returns. I did not have one person ask me to give $3 to the presidential election campaign. Okay? It's always been on the return. It's been on there forever. Okay? Like I said, it's just an option that they always put on the tax return. All right. As we talked about in the textbook, this is where we kind of get into those things that starts to talk about filing status. Okay? So this is where it's going to show how are the people going to file. Are they single? Married filing joint? Married filing separate? Okay? As you can see with this, for a married filing separate, I have to put the spouse's name and social security on the return. The reason for that is if one person in a married filing separate takes a certain deduction, the other person cannot take it. In other words, no double dipping. Okay? The other thing that you show here is, did they live together? Okay? Yes. If yes, did they live together after June 30th? That is half the year. Okay? That may determine things because you can be considered unmarried if you did not live together whatsoever after July 1st of the tax year. So when I have clients that want to do head of household because they consider themselves unmarried because they're separated, and there's a child involved, I have to ask the questions. Okay, that's fine. You guys don't live together, separate residents, but I have to ask them. He did not come over whatsoever, did not have dinner, didn't sleep on the couch, didn't use the bathroom, because IRS is going to ask these questions when they see this for somebody doing head of household if they audit them. And if they would happen to go so far as to interview the neighbor, and the neighbor says, oh yeah, his truck was over there, for the whole week of Thanksgiving. Well, then all of a sudden that, head of household status, which is better than married filing separate, is off the table. Okay? Obviously, there's some things here with married filing separate. You see some states listed. This is where community property or common law, a lot of those are Western states, but there are some states where that does come into play. We have our head of household. It does say with a qualifying person. Okay? So as we go down here, now we get into the children. Okay? So we have the two of us on, Harry and Harriet, and now we have Haley. Okay? She was born in 2010. And what I want you to think about, remember I was talking about those tests that we saw for the qualifying dependency? This is where we're answering those questions. Age. Is the person of age to be a qualifying child? Okay? They must be a citizen and have a social security number. How are they related? If I go in here to put this in here, you can see I have several choices. Okay? Stepchilds, foster childs, grandchilds, brothers, half-brothers, sister and uncle. And then I don't know how many of you have relatives that are none or relatives that are other. Okay? What those would come into play is if I have somebody that is living together and they want to claim a boyfriend or girlfriend that lives in the house. Okay? Very rare that ever situation ever really truly qualify. Okay? Because you have to really go through due diligence to say that that person has absolutely no income and provides no support for the house or themselves whatsoever. Okay? But there are instances where maybe two people live together and one has a child but doesn't work, and you have to kind of determine if that can go on the return. So those would be the options there. Okay? So I'm determining relationship. All right? Residency. I can say how many months. I have to determine how many months that person was in the home. In this case, Haley is Harry and Harriet's child, so she lived with them all year long. Now, this is the one where I get into residency. Okay? Does the child live with me? Or it's my child who does not live with me? Or in the case of my girlfriend, or excuse me, in the case of my mother, another dependent, or case of a girlfriend, that may be allowed on term, non-dependent, okay? A child who lives with me, you can see over here in the yellow boxes, and yellow boxes means that they're pre-calculated. I can't change them. Since I answered the questions I did, I get the child tax credit because I met the test, okay? So I've determined that, all right? I have a box here that's called DC. That stands for dependent care. So as I'm talking to Harry and Harriet, I may ask them, is Haley in a daycare program or after school program so that you guys can work? If they say yes, I would check the box. And if you look on my tree on the left, it made a form pop up that wasn't there before. So if you look over here on the left, this little form popped up on the tree, okay? Because if I uncheck the box, okay, the red goes away because now it says, well, I don't need that form. But if I check the box and hit enter so that there's an X in it, you can see that form. Well, we're going to learn about this form later. That is the form to get a credit to help you pay for your child care. Okay? So on this left, forms are going to pop up all the time. All right? Earned income credit, I talked about that. That is a big one. As far as calculation for that, the earned income credit is kind of something that's to help lower income households with children in them or qualifying childs or relatives so that they get a little extra to help meet their finance obligations. The way the earned income credit works, basically the perfect storm is a head of household that makes about $16,000 a year and has 3 children. So basically a single mom with 3 kids making $16,000. Her earned income credit may be $8,500, okay? So that's $8,500 of her refund that is a credit, not her getting money back that was withheld from her paycheck, just a flat out credit to her, okay? Refundable credit. We'll talk about those later too. But I want you to always check this box, all right, so that they're always calculated. It's not going to hurt the return if they're not eligible for it, okay? Identity theft PIN, we talked about a little bit in the book. They started this in 2016 to prevent separated parents from trying to race to get their tax returns done and claim a child. If it's determined that somebody's been claiming a child that they're not eligible for, the IRS will issue an identity theft PIN. You cannot electronically file a return unless that 6-digit PIN is on the return. Somebody tries to do it, it'll reject. Basically, like I said, what it's happening is for 2 parents that are trying to race to get their tax returns done so that they can be the first to claim a child, whether they can legally or not. That's what that may be, okay? Now, if I have Haley here and we determine that it is not their child, okay? So in a case of, a divorce, this couple got remarried, but they can't claim the child on there, okay? All right. Okay. So if that's the case, basically what's happening is this child is being claimed on this return because somebody's allowing them to. If you look down here, that person maybe is a non-custodial parent. Haley lives with somebody else, is their custodial parent. So that means that I can't do the earned income credit. Basically what I can do is I'm still eligible for the child tax credit, but I must submit a form. And we'll see this form later on, but the 8332 form, basically it's something. How this would happen is the person that would like to claim the child as a non-custodial has to complete a form, take it to the custodial parent where the child lives, and have them sign it to say, yes, I give permission, okay? So sometimes it can be a sticky situation because obviously the 2 parents may not get along. In the case of one of my clients, I have to go a little over and above because the one parent has a restraining order against the other parent, so they can't even get together to try to sign this. So they come into my office separately to have this taken care of. But it allows me to get more of a refund for the house where the child lives so that it can be done in the benefit of the child. Okay? So you have that on there. But again, these are all things that go in there that are determining credits, because this is our main info sheet. Okay? The software is set up to file for all 50 states. Okay? As I said on the earlier setup, I have somebody in Missouri. I have somebody in North Carolina. I have Florida. Somebody I know is going to be working for a while out of Texas. Obviously, Texas and Florida don't have personal income tax for the state, but we have the capability to file all 50 states within the TaxWise software. So if you have somebody that lives in New York all year long, that's where you put it. Well, I have somebody that lived in Missouri first and then decided to move to New York. I can put the 2 states in there. And then on my tree on the left, the other state form will show up. Non-resident. Best example of this is right now with the hurricanes. You might have somebody that works on power lines. He's going to be working in different states that file personal income tax, so he might be spending 3 months in Missouri, 3 months in Mississippi, maybe 3 months in North Carolina. He still is a resident of New York, but he was at those times non-resident because whoever paid him there paid him as if he was living in that state. Well, then you would do non-resident returns where you can exempt some of the tax so you don't have to pay tax in 2 states or have your money taxed twice. Okay. Obviously, we're going to do e-file returns. You can't do e-files on your software, but that's where we would check the box for that. Okay. Bank information, again, adding to what I know about a person, besides all those other things, I also know their bank account because they would like their refund filed in there. All right. When you do forms for electronic filing, we're going to teach you how to do the extension forms. That's this form 4868. Right now we're in an income tax return. Down at the bottom, you'll see on the forms and stuff that you do that they have PIN numbers. This is their electronic signature for filing a return. Okay? Just has to be 5 digits. That's all it's got to be. Okay? Just 5 digits. I always use their zip code because it's an easy 5-digit number for them to read. Okay? So you'd put their zip code in there, and we can enter today's date. All right, and they're just giving me permission to electronically file. Okay? As I said, identification, you have to put driver's license on there. We're not going to worry about that right now, but when you do a return now for most states, you have to put a driver's license. And then down here at the bottom on the main information sheet, you can put your initials in, and it'll fill in all your information about filing and everything. Okay? So what we've basically done here is we've done all the main information. It's basically answering all those questions that we just did in the textbook in chapter 2, okay? If I go to my tree on the left and I take a look at the 1040 and I click on that, I now have completed page 1 of my 1040, okay? So I can take a look and see all the information that's on there just like you would see on a tax return, okay?
Question.
Yes.
I don't know if I missed this earlier, but will you get into how we select the either 1040, 1040A, 1040EZ, all those?
Yeah, that was in when we had a little earlier. We were in the chapter. It talked about which form,
Okay.
you know, depending on that. So yeah, that's in the book there, and then we'll talk more about that once we add things on there. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So if I do a little print preview, and nobody's going to be able to see that. So if I go up to print form at the top of the button there, and I hit a print preview, you'll be able to see exactly what the 1040 would look like, just as if you had written it on the form from the IRS in a piece of paper. Okay? So we have all that in there. All right? So, you know, like I said, you're going to learn the forms the way I teach is we talk about the tax law, how it works, the terms, so that you understand that. Then I want you to see those forms in action, the calculation, the different things that it does, okay? Now, once you get in there and you get the software loaded, we're going to do a little navigation here. If I look at line 7, all right, says wages, all right? If I go over to the box here and I highlight it or make it yellow, I have a couple different options here, all right? I can hit the little triangle, or excuse me, little bracket in the gray box, or if I hit F9, it's going to pop up and it's going to show me all the forms that I would maybe have to put in to have that line, okay? Obviously, most people, and the things we're going to start out, is a W-2 from their wages, okay? So we'd have that, all right? So when you hit F9 in there, that's going to show you all your options, okay? All right. Okay. And like I said, once you get in there in the software, I want you to go and do all things. I'm going to send you a little sheet too that has all the keyboard shortcuts. That'll show you how to do all the different things, okay? If you go in here and there's little tabs here where it says add form, that shows you all the different forms. So if you can't find the form, you can look it up here. It's got a little search, okay? All right. If I click on my tree again on the left over my red circle, and I want to do a W-2, takes me right to that form. The W-2 piece of paper that a client would bring in has all the information that you would put in there. Okay? All right. Always make sure you check the taxpayer, what their address is. And here I have somebody making $15,000 a year. Okay? All right. And I put in $15,000. No withholding out of their paycheck. If you take a look at the blue box up in the left corner, see what it did? It calculated for me basically on those questions that I asked on the main info. They're eligible for the child tax and the earned income credit on the federal and the state. So their refund, if that household made $15,000 and had no money taken out of their paycheck, would still get a refund, $5,600 or more. Okay? So you can see the software as you put things in, you're going to be able to monitor and see what that refund would be. So this coming week with the problems that I'm going to assign and the things that I'm going to give you for assignments, I want you just to get in there and play. Get yourself familiar navigating. You can't break it. If you do break it, I will send you a new thumb drive. I have 20 more of them sitting here in my office. So if you do break it somehow, or we can't get you, the IT guy can't help fix it, you know, don't worry. All right? We'll get you a new one. We're not going to charge you for it, okay? Because we want you to learn the tax law and the way the tax forms work, okay? All right. So I'm going to stop the share for now, okay? And does anybody have any questions? You can just pop your mic there, and then here in a second I'll have you get a piece of paper ready, and then give you some assignments, okay? Any questions? You can, like I said, you can pop the mic off if you want to, or you can type them in. Okay. Seeing there's no questions, I'm going to show you one more thing here. With your books, when you get them and you have everything there, one thing you're going to get is our workbook. And this is where the problems are going to be. So you'll have a book that'll say workbook on the outside. A lot of things that I talked about and showed you within this. If you look at chapter 2, it's going to have little screenshots and little instructions where I talked about the different things to get into the software. Different things about entering the Social Security number, what you need to do. So you're going to see this besides the video that I've created. You're also going to see the these little screenshots, so you'll have reference in that. Okay, so it'll go through all those. So you can see there's a lot of the same screens that we just talked about when you saw my screen, and it talks about all the different things that you need to do to determine those, okay? The other thing that is in here, okay, is little problems. So you can see our assignments here, okay? So we have our class problem, all right? Michelle and Rachel Smith, it'll have little bios about them. Make sure you read these, okay? As we get to more involved problems, there will be portions of this where there only be things about their return that goes on their return that are in this little paragraph. Some things that go on a tax return don't necessarily come on a little official IRS document. You have to find out from the client when they tell you income. Best example, gambling winnings, okay? A lot of people don't keep or don't remember, and if they have gambling winnings, you have to report that as income, but they may never get a little slip or a little official document. So we'd have to add that. We'll talk about that later, okay? On the next page, you're going to have a little computer information sheet. What this is, has information, has the social security numbers, okay? So this is going to have all the information that is about the individual, things that you will put in there, birth dates, where they live. The reason I do your city, okay, if you're in a state where you want to learn about your state's returns, use your own zip code so that it generates the state return. So if you're not in New York and you want to do another state, you can put that in there, but I'll just allow you to do that. Has their information for their contacts, their dependents, okay? So all those different things that you put in there in the main info, all right? So there's a couple problems there. So again, got another one with Rita Walters. So we have a single individual. We have to find out from her, does she have dependents? Are these qualified children, okay? So obviously we have other information that has to go in there, okay?
So we go through these and plug them into the tax-wise?
Yes, yep, exactly. That's what they're there for.
And then what do we give you?
Okay, that's where I'll give the assignments. You know, like I said earlier, when we were talking about turning in homework, you know, I'll assign some different things that I'm going to give you right now. And then what I'll have you do is I'll send you something where you'll print a PDF on the return to send to me so I can see if you did the return, but you'll have that information, okay? First ones, I'm not going to worry about you turning stuff in because I just want you to learn there's not really any calculations, but I want you to make sure you get the information there correct, okay? So if you got your pencil and paper ready, all right, what we're going to do for the first, for next Saturday, I guess I should say, you know, for this week, and you can get them into me. I want you to read the chapters we went through. So that's chapters 1 and 2. Also read chapter 3. Okay. All right. And if you could just email me your answers to the exercises in chapter 2. Exercises in chapter 2. The quiz for chapter 2, and from your workbook, the 2 problems in chapter 2. Okay? All right. So those would be what I want you to turn in, okay? All right. Okay. All right. Any other questions from anybody?
Yes, so you're saying on page 2, exercise, what is it, 2A, 2B, 2C?
Yep, the exercises in there, just answer those. Like I said, a lot of times I won't ask you to do all the exercises. There's just certain ones. But for this first chapter, there's those exercises that are in there because I want you to make sure you understand filing status and things like that.
So that's what you mean by the answers to chapter 2 exercises?
Exactly. And all you have to do is just in that email that you've gotten, Just type exercise 2A, and then below it, just write all the answers that you got. You don't have to type out the entire question for me. Okay. All
And
right.
then the workbook 2 problems, chapter 2, we do those with tax-wise?
Yes, exactly. So that you get used to getting in tax-wise and getting the information in there.
And print the PDFs?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm not going to worry about this. I will send you information. The only time I'm going to have you start doing PDFs is after chapter 3, because we'll have some forms that you put in. These first 2 problems are just getting you acclimated about getting the information in about who the tax preparer is and all their information. We're not turning those in. I'm not going to require those. I just want the exercise and quiz for chapter 2. Okay. All right. And again, I've recorded today. Okay.